Hi folks, I just wanted to help you kind of get started. I was asking around to see what I could do to sort of like get you kind of going on SketchUp. I think a lot of the sort of products that I've seen so far are things around the sort of theme of storage, but also multifunctional storage. So today what I wanted to do was to actually be inspired by some internet research that I've done on a Italian industrial designer who is called Joe Colombo, and in the 1960s he develops this very contemporary design of what looks like an office storage holder for various equipment like papers, like folders, like things that you can put in like pens and pencils. The processes used in this were injection molding, but we've done very similar sort of practical processes in the workshop that I'm sure that you can relate to, such as vacuum forming, especially for the tray at the top, laser cutting. If you look very closely at this design, and I hope that you do, to kind of inspire you, you see that actually it's been laser cut, and a lot of the parts have been produced in sections, and he's kind of built it up, and you can kind of click it together like a big piece of Lego. So it's really interesting, and we've done line bending as well with the strip heater, and there's sort of some similar processes as well. There's separate different sort of features and components of this, which I'm kind of going to go through to explain to you how to do, and I think that hopefully these will kind of help you kind of get started on your own sort of multifunctional designs, or perhaps you're doing some garden storage of some kind, or sort of like presentation. But I think this kind of covers a lot of bases, because you could use it for so many different things in actual fact. You could have flowers in these gaps here, and you could have papers in these gaps. You could have it for a workshop, for a office. It is actually a really multifunctional product. Okay, so I'm going to just get started. I'm going to use the square shape tool to just draw 500 at the base. Actually, I'm going to make that 400 by 400. Let's make it a little bit sort of like slimmer, and I'm going to raise that up using the push-pull tool we'll make it 600. Okay, that's sort of like looking at our sort of model there, that we kind of like, that's a nice kind of, I'd say that's a nice height. She doesn't have to sort of stoop down too low to put things on the top. Of course, you'll have to maybe kneel down to get to things along this side, but that's absolutely fine. I'm going to work my way from the top down. So looking at the top, we've got this tray. It looks almost like it's vacuum formed. This side, of course, I'm going to just move across, I would say I'm going to move across 70. I'll move across 80. And I'm just always going to be drawing guidelines on this. And I've talked to you before about this, that this is a bit like sculpting rather than an actual fact drawing. And I think that's one of the main differences between this program and actually freehand drawing. If you were to be asked that question in the exam, what's one of the main differences, it's in actual fact you're actually kind of creating a virtual block, and as a result of that you are sculpting into that block. You're not actually doing drawing per se, where in line drawing you start with lines. In this way, and this sort of method, I find that you start with a block and cut into that block and carve out of that block, a bit like Michelangelo would with these big blocks of granite. So I've just used the offset, which is really handy to get an equal line going around something. I've put a 10mm border on the inside of that outline, on the inside of that sort of perimeter here. You can stand papers up inside of that. I'm going to not use the same technique. I'm just going to draw freehand a box here, which is going to be big enough to store A4 papers, which of course is 300 by 210 millimeters. So I'm going to make this 300, 220. Let's see what happens. Okay, it's a little bit too big. Let's see if we can kind of move that. I would actually redraw that. So I'm going to try drawing that again from a sort of an area which is closer to the edge. Yeah, there we go. Let's have a look at that. So let's do 300, 220. Yeah, I'm happy with that. Now from that I'm going to actually draw a couple of guidelines coming off, because we need a little stationary tray on the side as well, and I'm just going to split that up actually to make it look a little bit different. What I'm then going to do is I'm going to use once again the offset. Hang on, where are you? This is obviously quite different to the one that you have at school, because we might have a downloaded version of this. Alright, okay, which was like 2016. Right, okay, so I'm just going to rub away those lines. I don't want those lines anymore. Those lines on the outside. So once again, it's all kind of nicely framed. Okay, I'm going to use the push-pull, and I'm going to go down 50 millimeters, which is 5 centimeters. And also I want you to notice this feature. If I want to keep this symmetrical, or the same depth as what I've done already, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to push-pull, but it's like a fishing line with a magnet at the end which attaches to the other face, and it just makes it nice and symmetrical. So that's 100 deep, these are 50 deep. Okay, when I go down and I draw down and carve into this shape, I'm going to have to be very kind of cautious that I don't actually cut into the shapes. Let me just sort of show you an example of what can go wrong, and this will start to mess up the symmetry of your drawing. Check this out. You don't want that happening. Yeah. So you don't want these shapes intersecting with each other. So you need to actually consider, once again, not only the measurements, but like, where are you putting things on this design? Are they intersecting with each other? So I'm going to go down. I know that depth there is 50. I know on the other side that it's 100. So I'm going to go down, to be safe, 150. Alright, and I've made my mark down here 150. Yeah, and that's SketchUp's going to remember that. I'm going to draw along this edge. What I love about SketchUp is it's intuitive. It's going to draw me a parallel line there. It's going to draw me a parallel line. Let's have a look here. Lovely. And I'm going to measure down, to make this nice and easy for myself. I'm going to measure down 300. Okay, where are we now? Where's that line gone? Okay, let's just check that. That's 150. Okay, it's just done 150 again. I'm going to stick with 150, that's fine. 300 is too far actually. Yeah, good. Let's see if we can go down. I'm going to go down to, let's see, I'll go down 30. There we go. Going to go across again. So I'm going to kind of carve this up in two ways. One for the drawers. This is going to be halfway along, is going to be 200, isn't it? So for the drawers I'm going to need a little extra if I want to consider using those for papers. So I'm going to go 150. And I'm going to just make that symmetrical, and I'll make that symmetrical on the other side, why not? 150. Good. Come on, draw down. Alright. Now also I need to consider that this thing's on wheels, so I'm going to draw up from the bottom. I'm just dividing up my space at the minute. You can see that. How much have we got left here, actually? Let's go back. That is 270. So if we draw down 150, keep it symmetrical to the other thing. Yeah, I can just type in the number. I'm just kind of using the mouse itself. Oh, that's great. Okay, so we're going to have wheels on this thing. Where are the wheels on it? Okay, there's one on the corner and two in the middle. That makes sense. So it's kind of like a tricycle. Alright, we'll come to those afterwards. Let's rub out the lines we don't need. You have to do this before you push pull, because if you don't do this, it will confuse SketchUp and you'll end up with that kind of thing can happen. I tried to rub out the corner edge, which totally just sort of like just stripped away a face, because that's what will happen if you take away one of these edges of the contour. SketchUp is going to it's going to say, okay, so you want to strip away a face of that, that's fine. Okay, I'm using the pan tool. It's very handy when you start to kind of get a bit stuck with it in the wrong place. Right, I'm going to use push-pull, and we've got that kind of gap at the bottom for papers, right there. Great. I'm going to be a little bit artistic, and I'm going to put a little bit of a put a little bit of a contour in there. I'm going to put a 10 border on that, so it's nice, and then I'm going to just put that down. Can't put it down too far because the wheels, I'm going to make space for the wheels at the bottom. I'm going to push pull that down 50 again. That's not, well, hang on, it's not that deep. Deep enough, okay. Right, along this side there's going to be drawers, so I'm going to push pull this so that there's an open space, and I'm going to be designing the drawers separately and then inserting them as separate components. I'll come to that last. Looking at this, you've got these really lovely kind of, yeah, sort of storage spaces, and for this what I'm going to do, just to keep things symmetrical and make sure that I'm not intersecting with those drawers above, I'm going to make these follow that line there and follow this line here, and I'm going to go down 50 from there. That's my absolute kind of max that I can go to. Great, so that's kind of all my guides in place, and let's see what that length is. It's kind of, sometimes you kind of figure it out as you go along, and when I'm using the pencil, I want you to look at the length over here. That's what I'm using as my guide, 380. Okay, so I think a normal hand size is about 100 millimeters, the 4 fingers together. So if we think about this, I'm going to use 2-point arc. I find those the easiest to use. And if we start up here, and let's say that's 50. You've got to be careful which side you do this on, and make sure it's on the right face. What's that? Can we make this? So 25. That's a bit small. I'm going to try and double that size. So if we go down, let's make it 100. Come on. Come on. Oh, undo. Go down 100. Very good. Alright, let's get it out on this edge. 50. I'm happy with that. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a little kind of space inside. Let's make that 100, comma 30. Let's make it 100, comma 50. No, let's make it 100, comma 40. Yes, I'm happy with that. Right, these two cool sort of like shapes together, I'm going to replicate just one time, I think. Let's see if I can copy them. I'm going to actually I'm not going to take any chances. In actual fact, I'm just going to find the center, and I'm just going to draw them again. So the center here would be 380, that's 150 plus 40, that's 190. 190. Cool. Alright, and I'm just going to do that shape again. I've just done it, it's still fresh in my mind. So that was 100. And let's just draw that out. That was 50. 50. And we're going to draw another square or another rectangular shape from there, and that was 100, comma 40, right? Yeah, nice. So those are two symmetrical shapes. I'm going to get rid of that guideline, rid of that guideline, rid of that guideline, rid of this inner line, this inner line, this inner line. You're going to see what I'm doing in a sec. So I've made these really nice kind of, sort of slot shapes. And what I'm going to, get rid of that line as well. And now I'm going to just go to the other side of the face. Now it says it'll do that fishing line thing again, go to the edge. So you can kind of build up nice complex sort of shapes, and then just push and pull them along the face, and it makes really quite beautiful shapes if you want. Alright, we're almost there. Thanks for bearing with me. This shape, if I remember correctly, was 300 by 300 by 300. Let me just double check that. Or was this? This was actually 150, wasn't it? Yes. So each of my drawers is going to be 150. Going to be 50 by 300 by 300. So I'm going to draw that on the floor. That's going to be 300, comma 300. And you'll see why I'm doing this separately in a minute, because it's going to be really great. So let's have a look. I'm going to make that 50. Okay, I'm going to do an offset again inside of it. This bit's kind of nice and quick. So we'll do an offset of 10 mil. It's probably we're using 10 mil material. And if I'm going to say that everything is 10 mil inside of that drawer, I'm going to go down 40, because 50 and 40, the difference is 10 mil. Okay, so that's one drawer. Now what I'm going to do with this, if you're using the online program, it took me a little while to find this, you have to right click and make component. I'm going to call this drawer 1. Great. Cool. So that means that we can now copy this entire shape by itself, which I'm going to do. So I'm just going to Control C, Control V, and Control V again. And I'm going to take this first shelf, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick it up and I'm going to move it. I'm going to try, this is where it gets a bit tricky with SketchUp. Now the great thing about making this component is you won't just drag an edge of this, you'll drag the whole kind of drawer. Okay, that looks a little big. Okay, let's undo that and check my sizes. Measure twice, cut once, they say. Oh, it's 250. Okay. Alright, okay, so what we need to do is just make sure those are the right size. Okay, so I'm just going to redraw them because it was fast enough. You could kind of go into them and start to try and alter them, but there's no point. 250, 250, and push pull that 50. It's much faster doing it this way. There we go. 10, and push pull down 40. Good. All right, make a component. Drawer 1. Temp 2. Okay, so Control C, Control V, Control V. Great. Okay. Alright, so let's go back to the Move tool. Oh, that's still selected, so I need to select this drawer because this is the one I want to move first. And what you need to do is you need to kind of, stick it to the edges of something else. You can't, you know, if you try and do, it can be a bit tricky with the moving of things on SketchUp, so you have to be kind of wary of that. And what I usually do is I grab a corner, yeah, and then I stick that to another corner. That could be this corner, that could be that corner, that could be sticking out from that corner. If you wanted to have, say, something sort of sticking out from this, that's absolutely fine. And you need to deselect it and select the other thing to kind of move the other thing. Once you get the hang of it, that was the thing that actually phased me quite a lot when I started using SketchUp. And once you kind of get the hang of moving things around, that's it. You kind of, you know, you've won. You know. All right. So the great thing about having these as drawers is, of course, we can kind of move them around independently of the other shape. So, for example, if you look. You can't actually see it on here, but you've got this sort of like axis here which you can move out the drawers, and probably they're shaped in a kind of better way than I've done them, but what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pretend that that's here and that you can kind of pull them out this way. So what I'm going to do is, and I hope this works, so I'm going to use the rotate, and I'm going to just grab it along this line and rotate it out. Lovely, that worked. I'm going to do the same with the other drawer. If I can select it first. Very good. Select the drawer first and then you have to get onto the right plane. There's X, Y, and Z planes, and I'm trying to get along, yes, the horizontal, the floor plane. You have to kind of draw a line along the axis that you want to move out, and then you have to move it out. And there we go, that's nice. And then it just adds a little bit of interest, it adds a little bit of animation to your design, if you like. So let's just rotate that out as well. It makes it look really... And one of the things, if you're doing all your measurements right, and I have told you this is probably one of the most important things in the entire design sections, to make sure that you're getting your measurements right. That if you do all of your measurements right, it just increases your marks in a non-examination assessment situation. I mean, I can now put measurements on this. This thing here, dimensions, which is the correct word for it, and you can put those on there, and that actually gives you something to actually build with, and you can throw those measurements on anywhere, and so long as you've done everything, you've measured everything, like for example, just thinking about the size of an A4 page, it's brilliant. One word of advice though, if you are putting measurements on, put them on after you have rendered this with textures. So for example, if I want to like make this all red, for example, then let's see if I've got the paint bucket here, yeah. Or let's just say I'm making it this color, right? Then do that before you put the measurements on, because sometimes it can get confused by putting the measurements on too early, and it tries to kind of draw around the measurements, and it gets confused. So just a word of advice there. Alright, last thing, thanks for bearing with me, is let's put in some wheels, because that adds a second layer of complexity, which is mechanisms. And if I do remember correctly, this was sort of a tricycle deal where you had wheels at the side. Now you kind of got a wheel at the corner, two there. I'm going to make this, yeah, I'm going to kind of make this a tricycle side. This side I think is symmetrical, so I'm going to put two wheels on here, and to do that I'm just going to zoom in. I think I'll use my pencil as a guide again. Just going to find the center here. Well, that is 400, right? So let's just go to 200. It gives you that lovely light blue dot when you've hit the midpoint. And let's just put a midpoint in. And I think I'll just put it in here again. So the great thing is every time you put in a midpoint, you can divide it up again by putting another midpoint in. And yeah, it's great. So let me think. We're gonna have wheels. So I'm just gonna actually just use that 2-point arc again. I'm not a big fan of the 3-point. I'm going to do the 2-point arc, and let's just see. Okay, actually, let's just undo that. I'm going to draw this line up. Let's see, what's that? That's 39. Let's make it 50. Yeah. Okay. And let's draw a box on that first of 50 by 50. 50, 50. I'll just delete the other thing. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to divide this again. So that's 25. Oh, hang on a sec. What's going on? Ah, it's going off my other line. So I'm just going to draw along that line there. This should be, we'll just do 25. So come on. There we go. Getting confused because I drew a line initially just as a guide. There we go, that's better. And I'm going to use my 2-point arc, stretch it out to there, and it snaps to the box line that I've already created. Nice, nice. Get rid of that extra line, any of that extra geometry, because it will just confuse SketchUp and me possibly. So right, I'm happy with that. I'm going to pull this in. Let's say 40. Right, that's deep enough. Okay. Quite happy with that. So I'm going to kind of replicate that around the other corners as well. But I want to kind of keep this relatively short, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to draw a circle for the wheel, and I think what I'll do is I will just maybe show you another technique. Now if I remember correctly, that gap was 50, so I'm going to make this wheel 20 radius, which will make it 40 diameter. Let's pull this up. Let's make that, well, let's make that 30, because if I remember correctly the depth was 40, and I'm going to try and push the limits here and rotate it up. Before I do that, I'm just going to select the whole thing. It's a relatively simple object, so I should be okay to rotate it without distorting the actual object itself. What I'll do, I haven't grabbed it correctly, so I'm going to use that point, and I want to go straight up to the top. There we go, lovely. Okay, great. Okay, so we're going to move this over. Problem is, how do we line this up so that it's perfectly? I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a little center line in there. If I can get in there. I'll just have the center line to the top of my arch, and I'm going to just draw another center line here. You're not going to see this anymore once I get the wheel in. And oops, undo. Let's undo that because I've drawn it from the back edge to the front edge, which happens sometimes. Right, okay, wheel. Thinking about this. That actually doesn't look dead on. Well, maybe if we give this a go. Alright, let's move. Can we go center? Let's try that. Okay, good. Yeah, I don't think I've rotated it perfectly to a 90-degree angle. Let's undo that. Let's make it component before I put it into that shape, because otherwise it will pull bits of that shape out. Make component, wheel. Okay, right, great. So let's just move that in. I think it's, if you can see here, it's at a slight kind of, it's slightly out, if that makes sense. Okay, I don't think centered is great, so I'll just move that. That's fine, and I'm just going to move it out again if we can. Come on. Yeah, that's nice. Great. Okay, so it's kind of floating there, but it's okay, and it is a little bit skewed. I think there's going to be a problem with this wheel if we try and get it wheeling around, but you get the idea. And let's just, can we bring that down a little bit? Good. So okay, escape. I am pretty happy with that. That's kind of like, yeah, I think we need to fix, somebody needs to get a screwdriver and fix that wheel. But yeah, you get the general idea, and I don't want to make this video too long, so I'll just see if I can just copy this whole, undo, and see if I can copy this whole thing and just move it. Copy. Interesting. Okay. Okay, we could try rotating this whole thing. There we go. You've got to select an edge, select a line, and then bring it up. And I think, yeah, you can do 90. That's what I should have done. I should have typed in the angle. Okay, can we make this a component? Let's make the whole thing a component. A component. Yes, call it component 1, that's fine. Let's rotate it. Yep, great. And let's just copy it again, just in case this works, and I hope it does. Right, okay, so if we measure along 25, no, it wasn't 25, it would have been 400, 200, 100, right? Yeah. Put a little marker in there for ourselves. Alright, let's see if this works. Don't know if it will. You've got to try things. Alright, okay. Boom. Now, do. I think what's happened is my component has kind of disappeared into the block. Can we make it if we pull it out a bit? No, it doesn't really like it. Let's put it to there, point to point. Okay, let's try something else. It's kind of in there. You can kind of see it sticking out a little bit. Ah, I see. Okay, maybe if we move it back into the face. And move it up a little bit. Alright, okay. And maybe just trace over it and see if we can kind of cut into it again. So what I can do is maybe I can cut this away. Okay, right. So let's try rubbing that out. Probably be disaster. Oh, it worked. Undo. Kind of worked. Still got a bit of odd symmetry going on there. Yeah, it doesn't like me cutting that away. What about this one? Yeah, I'll get away with that. Okay, we've lost the bottom bit of this because I've kind of messed with the symmetry a bit. How do you fix that? You start to draw lines along it. Like that. And you kind of fill in the gaps with a line tool. And then that makes it happier. Aha! Look, I haven't measured them correctly, so this one's far along from there. But it was worth an experiment at the end of that, I think. That's pretty good. I need to put a wheel there still, but I want to leave it there for now because this has probably gone on for quite long enough. I hope this has helped you. Once again, check out Joe Colombo. He hasn't just done really nice designs on that. He's done like seating, he's done light furniture, he's done lots and lots of different things, as have lots of the 70s Italian designers who I particularly like their lighting sort of arrangements. Some of it's quite kind of colourful and bold and relies heavily on the beauty and symmetry of geometric shapes. Alright, I hope you found that helpful and see you next time. Alright, all the best.